Hi and welcome back to another video on our MC19 project. You might recall in the last video in this series we put a primer surfacer coat onto the tank and we were at that stage we were kind of happy with it. Now as it's dried, there are actually two spots that I've spotted that I'm not 100% happy with anymore. Most of the tank is quite good though, so it's had a significant amount of time to dry. Because of other commitments I really couldn't get back to it. So what I'm going to do, we've got the two spots, one there and one up there, and I'm just going to block back the primer surfacer that we've got on there and see what it looks like after we've rubbed it back. I have a feeling there may possibly be a bit of filling that needs to be done, or just a couple of spots where we need to redo the primer surfacer. But until you rub it back you can't really tell what the exact state of the surface is. You know, like when you rub it back you take off all the high spots of course, and some of these there are minor imperfections in there but they'll blend back. There's no problems with that. It's just these two spots, and we'll see how they go. So because we're starting to get to the point where we're going to be putting colour on it, up to this point I've been using 240 or 360 grade wet and dry. This is 800, so we're sort of stepping back to something that's going to give us a smoother finish. I'm using the block here on the flat surface, and one thing you need to bear in mind is that the primer surfacer is quite soft. It is designed to be rubbed back, it's what it's about, so you need to be gentle with it. You know, don't dwell in one spot for too long. Certainly keep that circular motion happening, and what you'll find is the 800 paper will knock that back and it'll actually look half decent. It'll definitely give you a smoother finish, and you can see that the material being removed there is quite significant as well. So as I said before, we don't want to go too insane and we'll run out of primer surfacer real fast. Now if it wasn't for those two dodgy spots, the object of the exercise now would be to simply smooth it out and prepare it for the top coat. We're going to put another primer over the top of this. When you're painting, basically you need to watch for incompatibility issues. So I've got a primer, a colour coat and a clear coat that are all known to be very compatible with each other. They're all from the same place. BCS paints at Revesby. They're really good for colour matching. So we're going to white on this tank, and it's going to be NH196 is the paint code. It's the original white for the MC22. So it'll all make sense, by the way, when we break out the fairing kit. It'll all make sense as to why we've gone to that colour. But at this point I'm working on the flatter sections. I want to make sure they're nice and flat. This paint that we put on here, if the tank cover's good on the fairing kit, it probably will not see a great deal of the light of day. The tank cover basically leaves a ring around there. I sort of considered doing this in the blue or the black, but decided on the white for a number of different reasons. But it should look pretty good with the tank cover. just flattening that out. I'm not pressing very hard at all, keeping that circular motion going, and I'm doing this more by feel, because when you start smoothing that out you will feel the rough patches. Try it and you'll see what I mean. Alright, so I guess this is about the point where we go on to the time lapse, so you guys don't have to watch me sand this down painstakingly. At this point, because we're getting closer to the top coat, we want to go nice and easy. I found another spot there as well that I'm not happy with. It's all well and good to say I'm happy with this, and then down the track if you spot a problem or something you don't like, an imperfection that you want to get rid of, absolutely, you know, be happy with what you've done. Don't set things as you know, don't just assume that everything's graven in stone. We can rub this right back to bare metal and then guide coat it again if we have to. It's just a question of how happy you're going to be with your paint. Okay, so I've given that quite a rub back, and you can probably spot little bits of white starting to poke through in places. This is not a problem. When you're talking primer surfacer, what we're really doing is creating a good surface for the new paint to go on. Now, as long as all of that is smooth, this is still a good surface. There's nothing wrong with it. We're going to prime over the top anyway. So what I've done, I've had good success with my 3 dodgy spots, by the way. Just sort of finishing roughing this down. If we get the paint too thick in there, we won't be able to get our fuel cap on without damaging the new paint. So we're just going to let that dry so we can inspect it a bit more thoroughly. So we've let the tank dry off, and it's actually good. That's not 100% perfect. That's not too bad. And that's come up really well. So they were the 3 main faults that I spotted. And I'm quite happy with it. So I think it's about time we sort of thought about putting a top coat on it. I think I just need to sand along there just a little more. As I said before, it's up to you to decide when you're satisfied. When I do a show pony, I can do 3 or 4 guide coats. I really can. With a car, if I ever paint a car, I tend to use the long board on, because cars have big flat panels, so you can use a long board, which is like a sanding board about that by about that, and you can really flatten those things out. With a tank, not so much. Really, you just want to get rid of your imperfections and make sure that when people look across the surfaces from an angle, that they don't see ripples. You know, so that's where the sanding block tends to come into play, and you can actually see that it's knocked the top off that putty there to some degree. But yeah, I'm satisfied with this. What you need to bear in mind though is that even though other people won't see the small imperfections, nobody will ever get that close. You'll always know they're there. So just a thought. Anyway, I think we need to start thinking about, well, I'll do a little bit more sanding. I won't bore you with that. I just feel that that area there needs a little bit more work to make sure she's nice and smooth. This is a smooth surface now. In fact, it looks kind of nice in a grey primer sort of a way. You know, and from here what we need to do is keep the surface flat and smooth for the top coats. So I guess onwards. I won't be top coating. I won't be doing any more painting today. Today in particular, it's quite humid. You don't want to paint when the humidity is too high, above 80%, even 80% is pushing your luck, is too high. You'll end up with orange peel. If it's too cold, your paint will run. If it's too hot, it'll flash off before it even hits the surface, and it'll give you a very rough finish. You can circumvent that to a degree. In higher temperatures, use more thinner when we're spray canning it like this, because we're not going to bother getting the gun out for a tank. You know, we're really stuck with the mixture that's inside the can, so I would limit it to about 30 degrees. Painting early morning is good. You know, just as it's warming up, when it hits about 20-22 degrees, lay your paint. It will get touch dry, and then when the heat of the day hits, we're talking summer here of course, when the heat of the day hits, it will bake the paint on for you, which is really, really good. Okay.